This week, hijacking printers to promote your YouTube channel. Fake iOS apps that steal money. Google patches 11 critical remote code execution vulnerabilities in Android. The Marriott hack, if you haven't heard already, I'd be surprised, hits 500 million Starwood guests. And getting pwned through an oscilloscope. Jason Wood from Paladin Security joins us for expert commentary, and we'll discuss how the Iceman hacker was charged with running a drone smuggling ring from jail. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Welcome, everyone, to Hack Naked News, episode 199 for December 4th, 2018. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. Join us for our webcast with Chronicle. It's going to be about intelligence-powered malware hunting. That's right, Brandon, a.k.a. the same Brandon that presented with Allison at B-Sides Rhode Island, will be presenting. It's going to be held December 5th. 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, securityweekly.com/Chronicle. Go there now and register today. And now the security news for this week. A hacker, or I like to call it an attacker. I wouldn't use the word hacker, especially in this story. An attacker has hijacked printers worldwide to promote a popular YouTube channel. Now, I'm not going to mention the YouTube channels involved because I believe it's a very unethical way to garner attention and ultimately gain more subscribers to your YouTube channel. However, the article again says the attacker scanned the internet for printers with port 9100 open using Shodan and hacked them, publishing a message, printed out a page, that invited victims to unsubscribe from a competing YouTube channel and subscribe to their own YouTube channel instead. The attacker used the printer exploitation toolkit, which we ran a technical segment on, I believe last year on Paul Security Weekly, to compromise the vulnerable printers, although that wording probably in the story I would argue is not really compromised. If you're just going to print out a printout on a rogue printer, doesn't necessarily mean you've compromised it. It just means it's open the world so anyone can print on it. The PRET toolkit is a legitimately developed, of course, research by a university in Germany that they say is for testing purposes. The case is very singular and raises the discussion about the importance of properly secured internet-connected devices. Largely depends on the make, model, and firmware revision to determine just what sort of attacks are possible. As I said, sending a rogue print job to a printer is a pretty common vulnerability on ones that are especially exposed to the internet, or so my friend Bob tells me. Experts found data belonging to 82 million U.S. users exposed on unprotected Elasticsearch instances. More of this data exposure stuff going on the internet. The article states experts from Hack and Proof discovered open Elasticsearch instances that exposed over 82 million users in the United States. Elasticsearch, of course, is a Java-based search engine based on the free and open source retrieval software library Lucene. It is developed in Java and released as open source and used by many organizations worldwide, including many of us in security. Experts, though, after they scoured the internet, discovered 73 gigabytes of data during a regular security audit of publicly available servers. Using, again, the Shodan search engine, the experts discovered 3 IPs associated with misconfigured Elasticsearch clusters. 3 doesn't sound like a lot. And they did get some what could be considered sensitive data. I'm not sure if it was already intended to be public. Likely not, given some of the data that they found. Although having that much kind of makes me question what what type of data it was, where it came from. The article goes into a little more detail, but not much. A fake iOS fitness app is found to be stealing money in it's a tricky way. So the trick used by the fake fitness apps is fairly simple. They ask the user to scan their fingerprint, supposedly for fitness tracking purposes. Not sure how your fingerprint relates to fitness tracking, but anyway, instead they use that fingerprint to activate a dodgy payment mechanism. Once the user complies with the request and places their finger on the iOS device's fingerprint scanner, a pop-up showing a payment amount of $99, 119 or 139 euros, rather, I believe the article said, is displayed briefly, comes up for 1 second. It says this pop-up is only visible for about a second. However, if the user has a credit card or debit card connected to their Apple account, the transaction is considered verified and money is wired to the operator behind the scams. Nifty little scam, and users should be wary of devices that want to scan your fingerprint outside of maybe authentication. Some of the apps that I have used the fingerprint, which is really just a hash stored on your phone. M2M, or machine-to-machine protocols, expose industrial systems to attacks. Some machine-to-machine protocols can be abused, of course, by malicious attackers or malicious actors, which I like that phrase way better than hackers, so thank you very much. Whoever, I think this article came from Security Week. In the attacks aimed at the Internet of Things and the industrial Internet of Things, according to research conducted by Trend Micro and the Polytechnic University of Milan. The security firm has analyzed two popular M2M protocols, the Message Queuing Telemetry Transport, or MQTT, which facilitates communications between a broker and multiple clients, and the Constrained Application Protocol, a UDP even based server-client protocol that allows HTTP-like communication between nodes. More detail is in the article. Cisco patches a critical bug in their license management tool. The vulnerability is due to a lack of proper validation of user-supplied input. Go figure. For the SQL Server, go figure again. An attacker could exploit this vulnerability by sending a specially crafted HTTP post request. None of this should surprise our listeners. That contains malicious SQL statements. I think they're trying is a long-winded way to say it's vulnerable to SQL injection, right? This was all according to the Cisco advisory, who said a successful exploit could allow an attacker to modify and delete arbitrary data in the PLM database or gain shell access with the privileges of the Postgres user. So apparently they're using Postgres. And the ability to unauthorized way to manipulate your license database, probably kind of bad. It's early 2019, and your network can get pwned through an oscilloscope. This was not a very exciting story. Basically, a lot of these special purpose devices, such as oscilloscopes, tend to have many security vulnerabilities, especially when they are then networked, as are these. On Friday, SEC Consult said it had uncovered a set of high-impact vulnerabilities in electronic testing equipment made by Siglent Technologies. In particular, the bug hunters examined the Siglent SDS 1202X-E digital line of Ethernet-enabled oscilloscopes. I'm sure there's many of you out there that, well, maybe there are a few of you out there that have these oscilloscopes, and found the boxes were lacking even basic security protections. Among the flaws found by researchers were the use of completely unauthenticated and unguarded TCP connections between oscilloscopes and any device on the network, typically via the EasyScope X software, and the use of unencrypted communications between the scope and other systems on the network. Not earth-shattering in my opinion, but the title was kind of catchy. In the data breach news, Dell has reset all customer passwords after a potential security breach on November 9th. Dell detected and disrupted unauthorized attack activity on its network, attempting to steal customer information, including your name and email addresses and your hashed passwords. The initial investigation found no conclusive evidence that the attackers succeeded to extract any information, but as a safeguard, Dell has reset passwords on all those who have accounts on Dell.com, which is probably a lot of you. They didn't lose the information, unlike Marriott. That 500 million Starwood guests are in trouble. You may have heard about this story if you've turned on a TV and watched the news anytime. You've probably seen Dave Kennedy and others talking about this story in the news. Basically, 500 million customers of the hotel group Marriott International have been involved in the data breach. The hotel chain said the guest reservation database of its Starwood division had been compromised, of course, by an unauthorized party. It said an internal investigation found the attacker had been able to access the Starwood network since 2014. That's the most concerning piece of information for me in this story, is that the attackers have access, or had access, for roughly 4 years. Of course, customers have been notified. Marriott, of course, bought Starwood in 2016, which also is kind of indicative maybe Starwood was compromised during the acquisition phase. And then they brought that breach right in. They've got 5,800 properties worldwide. A critical privilege escalation flaw in patched Kubernetes, a critical vulnerability has been found in Kubernetes, the popular open source container orchestration system. Of course, allows you to automate the deployment and scaling and management of containerized applications. I like the little plug for what it does in the story about how it had a vulnerability. It's like an opportunity to tell everyone what Kubernetes does, but that it did have a vulnerability. This was discovered by Rancher Labs and is tracked as CVE 2018-1002-105. It's been assigned a CVSS score even of 9.8, which is kind of interesting. It does allow an attacker to escalate privileges by specially crafting requests to the target server. Google patches 11 critical remote code Android vulnerabilities. Time to update your Android devices. These remote code execution vulnerabilities dominated the Google December Android Security Bulletin update. The flaws are part of a total of 53 unique bugs patched by the Android security team, with a total number of 11 critical bugs, 6 of which are remote code execution flaws tied to, and this won't surprise anyone who's listened to the show for a while, the system's media framework and systems components. That media framework tends to come up in these Android security updates. According to Google, there are no reports that any of the unique bugs have been exploited. I mean, you're trusting that Google has mechanisms to detect that, and you're trusting that those are actually good detection mechanisms. They say exploited or abused. I'm not quite sure how you differentiate abused versus exploited. I guess, anyway. Patches are available, of course, for Google Pixel and Nexus platforms, and everyone else is pretty much at the mercy of your providers who will send over-the-air updates. So good luck on waiting on that as the holiday season approaches us. With that, we'll take a short break, come back with Jason Wood from Paladin Security for some expert commentary. Stay tuned. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/HNN. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Hey, welcome back, everyone. You caught me. It hasn't happened in a while, but you caught me not paying attention. You can go to go.stealthbits.com/2019 trends. Register for the StealthBits webcast titled Emerging and Continuing Trends in 2019, Privacy Regulations, Active Directory Security, and Machine Learning, for an in-depth discussion with myself and Rod Simmons. You can also check out their assessment at stealthbits.com/assessment. It's going to be a fun webcast. Make sure that you register. Now we welcome Jason Wood from Paladin Security. He's our expert for today, and he's going to talk about the Iceman cometh. What's going on, Jason?
Not much, Paul. So listeners of the show may find this name to be familiar in this article. I got a kick out of it because I remember reading about Max Butler, who was busted as part of the Carter's Market operation, basically carding ring and forum, has gotten himself back in trouble with the law again, even while in prison. His name is actually now Max Vision.
Max X-Ray
Vision.
I remember Max Vision.
Yep. I figured you would.
Because it had to do with the whole DNS T-SIG vulnerability, the lion worm, and then he worked for federal agencies for a while. And then, if you read his story, it's fascinating. I don't know how much of it's true. I mean, whatever you read on the internet, if you believe it's true or not. It sounds like he got porked by the federal agencies, although I don't know how much of a fault it is of Max Vision himself. It's a fascinating story. You should read it. I'm really excited that he's back in the news, though, because I've read about him way back when.
Yeah. There's actually a whole book written on him and what happened with him.
Oh, yeah.
What he did.
I got to read that.
Written by Kevin Polson.
Yes,
you can find it on Amazon. Yeah, so basically, I mean, if like Paul is saying, there's a lot of stuff out there about this guy. One of the things I remember about him originally getting busted is he was running Carter's Market, and he decided to take over a competing carding group's site, and so he worked his way in and took them over entirely, stole their data, and made use of it. Those activities resulted in, according to the charges filed and that he was found guilty of, $86.4 million in fraud. This is back in 2007 timeframe was when he was arrested. He was sentenced to 13 years in prison, which, if you do the math, he's about to come up for release next year, or at least that was the original plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, except now he's got some additional charges that he's pled not guilty to for smuggling and additional wire fraud while in prison. So this probably isn't going to end really well for him. According to the charges, basically, Vision got a hold of a cell phone, which was smuggled into prison. And that's actually a really common item, from what I've read, to be attempted to be smuggled into prisons. But he decided to take this a step further. He used his, it was a T-Mobile device, some kind of smartphone, right, to get a hold of stolen debit cards, which he then used to make cash payments, or buy cash payments, rather, with services such as MoneyGram and Western Union, and those were sent to his fellow inmates' commissary account so that they could use it to buy things back in, while they're there in prison.
He's just trying to survive in prison so far, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at it, I thought, well, that's a good way to boost your popularity. You got the big guys over here saying, don't mess with that dude. He got me $300
right.
on my commissary the other day.
Because other kinds of popularity could be really bad in prison.
Yeah, very.
Very bad.
Apparently, the smuggling ring went on for about a year and involved 5 other inmates who were part of it. After a while, one of the inmates, and most of those guys were in for long-term prison sentences, 15 years. So apparently they felt like they didn't have a whole lot to lose. One of them did eventually get released from prison. Vision, the guy's name was Jason Tidwell. Vision and Tidwell kept in touch, I assume via the smuggled in cell phone, and decided to expand the idea of their smuggling operation, or actually expand it from, just sending in money to smuggling. Basically, Tidwell got a hold of somebody who said they knew how to fly a drone, and decided to start making drone deliveries to prison. So Amazon apparently is not the only one who thinks that this is a good way of doing business.
I mean, it's actually a really good idea. I mean, we've all seen TV and movies, right, and all the different ways stuff gets smuggled into prison. You have to imagine that someone would eventually try and use a drone for that. Probably have a lot in the past and not gotten caught, right?
I mean, and if you look at prisons, I mean, they're meant to keep people in and stuff like that. So the fences go up a ways, and there's barbed wire on top, and the drone really doesn't care about any of that.
Right.
Funnily enough, they screwed up their first delivery attempt. I don't know what happened with it, but Tidwell was able to find a better pilot who actually dropped in what is described as contraband, but it was basically more cell phones, tobacco, and drugs. Not too shockingly, the secret starts to leak out. Snitching is definitely part of prison life, and this is no exception. somebody said that the delivery was made, the contraband was never found, but as the prison is doing its investigation, they got a prisoner to confess to picking it up, and he fingered Vision as the leader of the entire operation. If found guilty, and like I said, he's pled not guilty to the charges, but if found guilty, Vision looks like he is going to have an extended stay in prison beyond his scheduled release for next year. His defense is the guy who pointed at him is basically setting him up due to a dispute over a rule dispute in Dungeons and Dragons. So, got to keep yourself busy in prison somehow, I guess.
This is one of my favorite stories, like all year, Jason.
It's really fun. I really enjoy reading
awesome.
So smuggling in prisons, obviously, has a nice and long tradition because you can't get takeout or anything like that dropped off. Banned items find their way into prisons, and this is just kind of like a new evolution in the process. Drone delivery for your prison yard. Now, I am a little boggled that nobody noticed the drone flying over the prison like this because they're not that quiet. I guess they're not super loud if you're indoors, but if you're out there, they're definitely noticeable.
Yeah, you could do it at night too to minimize the chance of being caught, right?
You could, yeah. And if somebody knows to go out and look at a certain spot in the first thing in the morning, maybe they can pick it up before the guards notice.
But I think it's interesting the FAA established no-fly zones for drones around prisons in just June of 2018, which is not that long ago. But how do you then enforce that? Okay, so it's a no-fly zone. Like what? So what? Who's looking for drones around all the prisons in the United States?
Yeah, to me, it just seems like it's an enhancement thing. I live within 5 miles of an airport, which is a no-fly zone unless you call the tower and get authorization to fly, and you have to tell them how high you're going and all kinds of stuff.
I always think of Kevin Finisterre when I hear that, because he described calling the tower, and I picture it like, oh, hey, Kevin, what's going on? How you doing? Like having a really good relationship with the tower people. Anyway.
Yeah, I hear it's not that big a deal.
No.
I would be interested. I actually live with the airport I live close to is an Air Force base, so I always wonder what that phone call would be like.
Yeah, that's different.
I can certainly attest to the fact that that has not slowed down drone flights in my area. When I talk to people who are flying them, they have no idea they're supposed to call in.
Right.
So, really, if you're smuggling into prison, do you care about the no-fly zone and who notices in the first place?
I think it's a great business opportunity for a company like RF Spotter that uses RF frequencies to detect perimeter breaches in the physical sense. It came on an Enterprise Security Weekly, episode that not a sponsor. I'm just like, dude, it sounds cool. It's not really. It is security, but it's not really cybersecurity. And they had some great drone detection, based on the algorithms that can detect, a bird or something else in the air versus a drone because of the movement. He's got a great business opportunity now for every single prison in the U.S. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that was one of the thoughts I had is, prisons are focused on physical security, and this technology angle is something that they are struggling with. They have things, hear things in the news about different crimes being committed using technology and whatnot.
Sure.
And so it seems like they're really not very prepared for it at this point, and they'll probably continue to struggle here. My thought about the cell phone, is, well, can't they have some kind of detection to see that they're getting signals in areas that they aren't supposed to at least flag a little bit of an investigation? Your point about detecting the drones coming over the fence makes sense, because then they can do that remotely without being out in the prison yard and risking safety potentially to the guards. The prisoners are certainly being innovative. They're willing to take risks. Their quality of life obviously is diminished a fair bit. So to them, hey, let's give it a go, particularly when you're in prison for 20 years or something like that. So I expect, you can see more, we'll see more stories like this in the news. And as technology is used to commit additional crimes from behind bars. And as it turns out, all you need is a smuggled cell phone and you're in business.
Thank you, Jason. That was a very fascinating story. I really enjoyed it. And with that, we will conclude this episode of Hack Naked News. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.